Right, everybody, delighted to be joined on the Rugby Bunker for this episode by Tom Hamilton of ESPN. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Great, Ben. Thanks for asking. Enjoyed the weekend's rugby. Perhaps not quite as high quality as we'd have hoped for, but perhaps that's just teething pains for the autumn internationals. Of course, all the games have caveats next door to them, but yeah, all good. Already looking forward to next weekend.
Yeah, who was rustier, the players on the pitch or the journalists in the press box?
Well, probably all three of them. I mean, the pitch in Chicago was particularly rusty, and then so was Australia's attack, I think. And the less said, the better about the USA's defence. So, all in all, I think there's a bit of rustiness all around. And then, obviously, the old rusty leaves are falling off the trees at the moment, aren't they? So it's all part of it. Season of transition. But I think it was a decent start. Nothing really groundbreaking. I think England-Australia was good fun in parts. Some of it was way too sort of littered with the referee's whistle, I thought. Just the manner of the game. Scotland-USA is completely pointless. And then South Africa-Japan, similarly, I think what we take out of that, you see a generational fly half coming through, and then you see the world's best prop get injured. So it's just a bit of a weird one, really. And of course, Ireland All Blacks as well. But overall, yeah, a steady start.
That's an interesting point about the refereeing at Twickenham, because I'd sort of forgotten there was a passage where it was a bit like if Oprah did breakdown penalties, where essentially they were just being given out, one for you, and there seemed to just be a passage of at least 5 minutes where they were basically ping-ponging up and down the field from breakdown penalties because players were in the side, or they were not latching correctly, or they were off their feet. I had sort of driven that part from my mind. If I think about England first, I think I came away rating it as a 6 out of 10 performance, and maybe if I'm kinder on reflection, it squeaks into a 7, just because they couldn't play the way they wanted to play due to the conditions and a bit of rust, and yet they still, that ability to adapt and to kind of change your approach on the fly. I don't think we often give that enough credit in test matches. How do you feel about England a couple of days on?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, if we're giving it 6 out of 10, that's progress, because as I think a couple of them said afterwards, this is a sort of match which a couple of years ago they could have lost. This was their first win against one of South Africa, Australia, or New Zealand since 2022. So the fact that we're perhaps feeling a little bit underwhelmed, maybe, is real progress from England, because that's the standards they want to be held to. Overall, I think this, to be honest, this would have been an absolutely ideal match for Borthwick, because he'd have learnt so much about this group, and they did show that resilience, and they showed the adaptability to win. The strength of the bench. I actually think the talk of the bomb squad's overblown, personally, because there's no way that bench would stay the same for the All Blacks if they're in town. You expect the front row to start, like to switch, basically. So I think that's still a work in progress, and of course they're at pains not to call it a bomb squad. But I think overall Borthwick would have found this absolutely ideal. Loads of stuff to work on, 4 tries to 1. They completely nullified Australia's attack. It was non-existent. They could have scored more tries, held up twice over the line. And you also saw new look, well, I guess the second run out for that centre combination, you're seeing Guy Pepper, fourth England cap, but first at Twickenham. Same with Henry Pollock. It's extremely easy to forget that was his second England cap, given the last 8 months he's had. He's had a Lions tour in the midst of 2 sub appearances for England. So, look, loads of good bits to take away. And the fact that we are perhaps saying 6, 7 out of 10 is incredible progress from Steve Borthwick's team. It really is. I think it's sort of promising that perhaps we do feel it was a bit underwhelming. Fiji coming to town, be a lot of fun. You expect England to go 2 from 2 against them, and then it's the All Blacks. But look, as first run-outs go, as we talked about the rustiness, they only had their 4 training sessions. Australia, of course, cancelled that by saying they just travailed the globe about 18 times, and were without 4 of their best players, in Ikitau, Hooper, James O'Connor and Skelton. So look, caveats are plenty, but overall, a good first hit out from England, I think. And hugely promising.
Yeah, something tells me that Australia won't be scheduling a game against Japan immediately a week before flying over to Europe again, even though they made numerous changes to their side. They just looked leggy and sluggish, and as you pointed out, we're missing so many key contributors from this year. I mean, Hooper and Ikitau have been absolutely essential to what the Wallabies have done well
they just looked
in their
jet-lagged,
best performances. They did. They did, yeah. They did.
Yeah.
I think that really, it's not often that I think it's easy for people to forget that aspect of it as well, because you sort of forget that the impact that the time difference and the travel can have on a team, which is something that I think we have to consider when you see Australia play. Like, I mean, you're right. They were rudderless in attack, and the area where they kind of stunned England last year, which was that aerial game through Suoli'i, they were outdone there by Tom Roebuck. That's a good point on Guy Pepper as well. I think Guy Pepper, Charlie brought this up in our reaction episode after the game. Guy Pepper sort of being trusted to go with full 80 on that blind side, and with England switching out the other two back rows for what was his second test start. And his first test start was against the USA, so you can almost feel like it's a reflection of USA rugby that you can also say, yeah, like he got a cap against the USA, but who are we kidding? This was more his biggest game, and I thought he performed really well. If we touch on Fiji and selection, so at Penny Hill Park last week, Steve Borthwick teased the idea that he wants to see Ben Earl start a test at inside centre. He was asked about it again in the post-match kind of huddle after Saturday's win about the possibility of Earl playing there, and he sort of said, "Look, it's certainly something that I'm considering for the Fiji game, as in it's something that I've mulled over." How do you feel about Earl starting a test at centre, and do you reckon it happens this week?
Just think that the opportunities of playing a test match are obviously getting fewer by the game, if that makes sense. And I just think, I don't really know what he'd take out of it. I much prefer to see Ben Earl retained at 8 while playing most of his rugby, perhaps with ball in hand at inside centre. I love the way that Borthwick's thinking about these things, and I do like, the talk of George Ford at scrum half, talk of Pollock on the wing, these sorts of things. And I know Guy Pepper was training with the backs as well. It's an interesting one, but I just think it would be so on Borthwick to do this. Like, it would be sort of Razzie to the power of Razzie if he did this. But I can't see it. I know in about 3 days' time I might be looking extremely stupid, with which I don't need any help doing, but I just can't see him doing it quite yet. Surely he would want to see that Dingwall-Freeman partnership evolve, even though they play obviously alongside each other. Surely he'd prefer to give game time to Ollie Lawrence and just see something else there, maybe Dingwall with Ollie Lawrence perhaps. But look, if it happens, so be it. He's definitely got, you saw the way he sprinted away for that first try. He's got all the handling in the world as well. He's such a wonderful player. But to start him there and then to effectively have 4 back rows on the pitch would be quite a statement. So that's kind of what I think. What about you, Cola? What are your thoughts?
It's a good question. I like the idea. I don't understand when you're going to do it unless you're going to do it this week against Fiji. I can't see it being something that they would try in the Six Nations when there is more on the line, i.e. you're actually playing for a proper trophy. In that context, I feel like the Fiji game is the best time to do it. But what I don't understand is that if you were to do it this week, and if he is talking about it, as if Borthwick is talking about it, then I feel like you need to see, as you've said, more continuity, more cohesion from your centre partnership and from your back three. And therefore, if you're going to change it after one game as an experiment, does that really tee you up well for the All Blacks game next week, which is the game that I'm more than happy in the build-up to that week to heap the pressure on England. They simply have to win that game. It's unacceptable to have not beaten the All Blacks at home since 2012. I think it's gone on too long. I know they've come very close. I know they had that crazy draw. I know last year they were a 4 drop goal away, but it's time. So then if you have Earl at 12 the week before, is that the best preparation for that All Blacks game? Probably not. But then do you also need to see Earl start a test there at some point? Maybe. Basically, Tom, I'm torn. I'm properly on the fence with it. I see the merits of both sides, really.
I mean, what might make more sense is perhaps, just like they did against Wales, is to switch it so Earl plays the final 20 minutes there. So you can go with a 6-2 again and then shift Earl there for some of the second half, and he plays the last half an hour there, perhaps. That could make more sense. You could try Finn Smith at 10 alongside him, and then maybe Dingwall outside centre, Freeman on the wing or whatever. But I just wonder, opportunities are so scarce that it would seem strange to give it a go from the outset, I think.
Or is there a scenario where if the Fiji game gets out of hand early, which, I mean, it isn't impossible, do you then spend the final half hour with Earl and Pepper in midfield and Pollock on the wing? I mean, we've seen England this week drop a centre and a wing out of their squad and add an extra lock in a front rower, and maybe they change their focus to just having more forwards and go 7-1. I don't know. It's possible.
I mean, that's not a bad shot, actually. A 7-1 split on the bench. And then you have Ford covering scrum half, which he's spoken about, and maybe Marcus with him, I don't know, on the bench, because he can play, obviously, most positions at the back. Yeah, it's interesting. Look, at least it's not dull, right? At least, you know, it's for the first time in a while, we're talking about it in this sort of depth rather than talking about England's misfiring attack or porous defence or something like that. We're talking about him shaking things up even further, which I said at the start is a sign of progress.
Do you think parents up and down the country who are taking their kids to rugby training and envisioning them as future internationals are now going to just stop them from being specialist scrum halves or from being centres because the way the game is flowing and back rows are sort of taking over their territory? I mean, Borthwick's been very open about the idea of if there's a way to not have a specialist scrum half on the bench, then it's something he would absolutely look at and consider. I mean, yeah, I wonder if we're seeing this enormous reevaluation of the game, and actually then it takes you down into that territory of worrying about size, doesn't it, and the physicality of the sport, and is it sustainable? I mean, there's a whole long tangent we could go off on there, which we may not do now, but that's, you know, that's the way the wind is blowing, seemingly.
It's been something which Eddie Jones talked about to us from basically from the start when he took his job. He's been trying it for a while. We've seen like Botia moving around. We've seen the way that South Africa are using Esterhazen. They have used Quagga Smith in the past. It's definitely that hybrids are in. I was chatting to Jamie Roberts last week at the TNT event, and I asked him about this, saying if he thinks hybrid players are the future, and he said categorically no. He said you have to be someone who earns and learns your craft first in the position, become a specialist there, before you can even have any sense of shifting things around. I think he kind of felt that a hybrid player will never be better than someone who is an out-and-out winger or an out-and-out centre or whatever. They can never quite match that status. So I thought that was quite interesting. And Ben Kay sort of echoed it as well. And these are the guys who, you know, are some of the finest players we've seen recently. But then we're looking at how Razzie's using that bench and has done in the past with the 7-1s and the rest of it, and you know, how he used Dion Ferry and these sorts of guys. And then you're looking at the way that Eddie used to talk a lot about Jack Noel as a potential open side and using him there. The Ben Earl centre thing's been around for yonks. But is Ben Earl a better inside centre than Fraser Dingwall? Probably not. So I don't quite get it. I have to say I'm more in the Jamie Roberts camp on this one, but it is exciting. Maybe this is the way to grow new audiences, just a team of hybrid players. Maybe that's what R360 are going to do. So perhaps we're going to see Ox and Che at fullback or something like that at some point. I mean, I'd pay to watch that. That'd be brilliant. Do you remember that game when Genge was basically at quarterback against France under Eddie? That was quite good fun. And I think at that point he's also trying to pick Billy Vunipola at lock just to shake things up. So, I mean, look, there's 100 different ways of trying to do this game, which is why we love it. And it's why, you know, there's all these debates over it. It's good fun. It adds a bit of an extra dynamic. And if Ben Earl is at inside centre on Saturday, I know there's a few unsold tickets. Perhaps people will snap them up just to see something different. So look, it's an interesting one. I'd be surprised if he starts at inside centre and finished at inside centre. But let's see how it goes. I mean, we all remember the Bergamasco fiasco, right? When they played him at scrum half, and then that was just the most monumental cock-up. So let's always keep that in mind. But then, yeah, I am someone who probably are on the side of caution.
And you're right to raise that. But as you also pointed out, this isn't a new thing for England. Like they've been training Earl 12 for about a year. Maybe even longer than a year. It might be something that dates all the way back to post-2023. Now I come to think of it. Yeah, listen, I'm glad you mentioned Dingwall, because Dingwall is almost a bit of a rarity these days, in that he is just a specialist centre. He doesn't necessarily move around or cover kind of other positions in a way that we've become highly accustomed to other players doing it. Listen, that's a nice little tee up on England. Why don't we pause for a split second And then should we chat a little bit about Scotland, New Zealand?
I watched the highlights of Scotland USA. So obviously we were at Twickenham, so it was hard to then catch the full thing. I watched Ireland, New Zealand later, but the Scotland USA game, you saw a Scotland team which would have built confidence from that, and then you'd have seen a USA team who would have learned some awful lessons. And if you're World Rugby, you are wondering 6 years out from a World Cup in USA exactly how this is going to go in terms of the host's performance. Look, I know they were without hosted players because of Reg 9 and the rest of it, so again, asterisks everywhere, but then so was Scotland. But what you saw from a Scottish team was interesting. We saw a little bit of the options they have outside of what we've become accustomed to. The scrum half, Jamie Tolby, was good. And then we saw Liam McConnell as well, impressing. And obviously Darcy Graham, Duane van der Merwe and the rest. It's time for them to really step things up if they want to show tangible progress. And then for the All Blacks, a good win against Ireland, especially because of how Ireland have troubled them in the past. But it wasn't the greatest test match in Chicago. The pitch was awful. It was an Ireland team kind of refining themselves a little bit, and obviously the red card threw things a touch, and the All Blacks look far more happy in themselves at the moment. Ireland will grow, there's no doubt, and having Satiti on the bench, what a wonderful luxury to come on, and Damien McKenzie and the rest of it. So look, I still think the All Blacks will win, but I think Scotland will give it a really good go. And you feel that, as we said earlier, England have to beat the All Blacks. You have to feel that it's time for a Scotland statement victory. We just haven't had one in so long.
They've never beaten them. It's 17 years now. And in Scotland's defence, the last two games that they've faced them, 2017 and 2022, have been close. They've gotten it to either within a score or nearly within the score, but this is a far better Scottish side now and with better depth than in those games. I would argue. I think I actually take a bit of a dim view of that USA game, much as I really enjoyed Liam McConnell's brilliant pick up the touchline, then assist to set up on a Van der Merwe try. That was awesome. You could just tell that he was living the dream in that moment. I don't think playing a USA side and putting 85 points on them is ideal preparation for the All Blacks. I don't know who they could have played where they would have got a more competitive game, given it was outside of the window and player availability. But actually, if I'm facing New Zealand the next week, I want to be literally tested thoroughly in all areas, set piece, defence, just to ensure that everything is ticking and on song, and so that I can make any corrections rather than going in. And I'm not saying that Scotland will be running in on a massive high after thrashing the USA 85-0. I think they'll have perspective about, what that result means and what it kind of reflects about the state of USA rugby. But yeah, I would just want a sterner test, put it that way. And so I hope that doesn't come back to bite Scotland on Saturday. I agree with you, though, in terms of the need for a win over the All Blacks. What a fantastic chance to do it. The All Blacks travelling from Chicago over to Murrayfield. Although I would just caveat that by saying I feel like it's a bit of a myth that this is a struggling All Black side. Okay, they might be kind of weaker in some sort of areas than in the past, but I don't buy that it's. I think what the South Africa did to them in Wellington has kind of clouded people's judgment a bit. In that South Africa absolutely obliterated them, but the title for the Rugby Championship was decided on points difference. Like, this isn't an All Black side that's kind of reeling. I just think there are a few key positions and a few key elements off being the kind of, we're so used to them like setting the standard. I think that's the difference. And the beauty of it is we're in November 2025. They've got 2 years to kind of go through the processes of fixing those areas under Razor and to be right for 2027. So I think Scotland and England have a massive chance, but I don't quite buy the concern here.
No, I think we'll learn a huge amount about the All Blacks over the next two matches, won't we? And also, I guess, as a slight tangent, we'll learn a lot about South Africa as well and where they are without probably the world's best prop at the moment as well. So look, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks for certain, especially with ranking points and the rest of it with the World Rugby draw coming up. World Cup draw coming up and World Rugby ranking points. So let's see. But no, I think All Blacks should win. But I hope that Scotland push them really, really close, and it's a nervy one.
Speaking of South Africa, they're sort of in a similar boat, aren't they? Because they're coming off a huge win over Japan. That game at Wembley was organised to kind of get some minutes in the legs for their Japan-based players who hadn't featured as much going into the game against France in Paris, which is still arguably the game of the autumn. And basically Rassie and his coaches didn't want to go into that cold, which you can understand because I think he said in the run-up to the Japan game, they've had that before where they've gone to Dublin or they've gone to Paris and they've been caught out a little bit because they haven't had the game time. So they had that at Wembley. It looked a very wet and not necessarily mass attended event, but I think South Africa will have got out of it what they wanted in terms of the fitness levels, and one player in particular caught your eye, didn't he, Tom? Tell me who it was.
Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu. He is unreal. I mean, I listened to the presser afterwards, and one of our good friends, Alex Spink, was asking Rassie about him, and Rassie does his best to deflect the hype and the rest of it, pointing out they've also got like Mane Lebock and they've got Andre Pollard, but look, this kid is unreal. And we already knew that haul of points in Durban, unfortunately or fortunately, depending which way you look at it, the comparisons with Dan Carter are absolutely unavoidable, especially in age profile and the way he plays and what he's doing. He's seriously exciting. And in all this talk of needing new audiences and new superstars for the sport, he's someone there who can be at the forefront for the next decade if everything goes to plan. He is absolutely astonishing. So, look, it was Japan, and they're growing under Eddie, or trying to at least. But it was again just another ridiculous performance. I'm so looking forward to seeing how he plays. If they start him, it would be such a Rassie thing to put him on the bench. But if he starts against France, which I really hope he does, I can't wait to see how he does in the Stade de France against obviously a France team with loads of players missing, the world's best players missing, but it's going to be fascinating nevertheless.
I was going to say I could absolutely see him now not starting against France. 100%. But you're right. I feel like in South Africa, giving him a run out against Japan is fine. I think they kind of need to see him in those games, like that game in Paris. He has delivered in big games in the past. I think they just need to see more of that and to keep building that trust in him.
Definitely.
If he's going to be the person who leads them into 27.
All coaches do the same, right? They try and do their best to part the hype. Some players absolutely adore it. Look at Henry Pollock. Twickenham loved him, and he's only played, the best part of an hour of international rugby, really, now. But the way that the hype around him, and he delivers inside 7 minutes coming off the bench, and he's just a confident lad, and good for him. He's what we want to see in rugby at the moment, is big personalities who deliver time and time and again. And it's the same with Sacha, who's probably a little bit of a calmer personality. Well, he is a calmer personality, but he's so gifted, so skillful, and it's super exciting. I can't wait to see more of him.
Yeah, me too. I touched on it with Sam Lana last week when we previewed the autumn, but the emotion of that France-Africa game, from a French perspective, is going to be. I'm fascinated to see how the sort of crowd reacts to South Africa, just how hostile the game is. I'm sort of hoping as a neutral that we'll get the atmosphere kind of ramped up to 11, just because I think it's comfortably the game of the autumn. And I just cannot wait to see how all the kind of context around it sort of plays out. Tom, before I let you go, should we have a little chat about Wales? We can try and avoid the off-field Wales discourse, because I appreciate that is almost worth a whole other episode on its own. But it's going to be Steve Tandy's first game in charge as head coach against Argentina. I don't think... Actually, you start giving me your thoughts, and I'm going to check the odds, because I'm interested to see... I assume Argentina are favourites, but I'm fascinated to know by how much.
I reckon that it'll be... They'll probably err... I haven't seen the odds, so I reckon they'll err on the side of caution, and it'll be 4 points Argentina, is my guess. That's what I would... I think, look, he's... Obviously, the off-field stuff at the moment is dominating the agenda, right? So they've had that win in Japan, which was huge. But you have to feel for Steve Tandy and Jack Morgan. Not only are they fielding questions over a team who has been absolutely on its arse and is trying to rebuild itself, but also the fact that they're cutting a region and everything else that's going on. And he's without Faletau now as well. So for a new head coach and everything that he's doing there, I really feel for Steve Tandy, and I think he's coping with it brilliantly. The same goes for Jack Morgan, who is an astonishingly impressive figure, was brilliant on the Lions tour, but he's still a young captain. And what he's been through, having to front up to the press time and time again after the defeats, keeping a brave face on it, after that England hammering, the 68-14 record defeats or whatever, he's managed to keep, himself, it seems like he's managed to keep his spirits up. So look, really impressive. We all want a competitive Wales team. We all want them to be back to the standards we've seen in the past. What I think for me, and even though I've always been unashamedly a big Gatland fan, what this has shown is the truly remarkable job that he did in spite of the system for so many years. And we saw, what for me, one of the must-read things at the moment is Sam Warburton's column in the Times, and the way that Warburton was talking about what it was like when he was at Cardiff, where he had to have painful conversations with Peter Thomas saying, look, the basic reality is that 30% of the players in this squad are not professional rugby players. And that was even then. That was in Warburton's day when he was captain of the Grand Slams, captain of the Lions and the rest of it. And they had a team of household names. So that was, that sort of showed the shaky foundations. Now it's completely fallen apart because they're between generations. Those sort of legends of the game have retired. Some of them are in the sunset of their careers. So it's such an interesting time. And I really want them to do well this autumn. I think after the shit that they've been through, having Steve Tandy there, he's a good guy, and we'd love Wales to be more competitive for the Six Nations. I think we just need it, basically. So look, I really hope they do well against Argentina, and I'm sticking to my prediction of a 4-point swing. What is it, Kohler?
It's 12 is the handicap
wow.
that I'm seeing.
Really?
Yeah.
My optimism's gone. They're doomed.
I won't say the bookmaker because I don't want to cause a surge, but yeah, 12. So wow. I think your points are right. I think I said this with Sam last week. You just want to see building blocks. You just want to see signs of a defensive system going in, a few kind of nice attacking moments to hang your hat on. And if they only beat Japan and they win 1 out of 4, I kind of think that's fine. I think I can't remember if you were at the South Africa game last year in Cardiff, which was just a massacre. I think if Wales could get to that final game against South Africa, when let's be honest, the eyes of the rugby world are going to be on them because it's the standalone Tier 1 fixture that day. If Wales can get to that game and they can keep South Africa to 40 points or under 40 points, I think that would be massive. That's, in a weird way, a sign of how bad things have become. But at the same time, I think that would be enormous. I think that would be a sign that, there's a system in place here which is coming into effect.
This is the annoying thing about these autumns. They're going to be without their Premiership players, aren't they, for that match?
Yeah.
Going back to my chat with Jamie Roberts, I said to him, who excites you most ahead of the autumn from a Wales point of view? And he said, Rhys Carrick. So he's the one they're sort of pinning their hopes on as a new prop. Well, he's already got 20 caps, but as a renewed force in the front row. So Rhys Carr. Yeah. So not Rhys Carey, John Le Carre, Rhys Carr. But this is where I think that match could be pretty one-sided, unfortunately. And I know the box will be missing a few as well, but the strength and depth is different levels. So look, that's a shame, that match. But look, it's all about, let's see how they do against Argentina. They're going to have a lot of optimism. They're going to have a lot of goodwill behind them as well, especially because it seems like the entire Welsh rugby public is united in viewing the recent developments as being suboptimal. So they're going to have a lot of goodwill behind them, and you hope that they put out performance. And I really hope they do.
Well, listen, the only way is up, Tom. Wales can only get better, and I am here for it. I am willing to see growth and improvement and progress from Wales, and I hope we get it. What a pleasure. Thank you for coming on, mate. I appreciate your time.
Anytime, caller. Anytime. It's been a delight.
I'll see you for when Ben Earl scores a hat-trick at inside centre against Fiji at Allianz Stadium on Saturday.
Look forward to it.
Lovely stuff. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we will be back with you later in the week where Charlie and I will dive into those weekend's games with a bit of team news as well. But until then, see you in a few days.